Now we have to end 2025 in mourning and grieving instead of celebrating 2026. So this is beyond heartbreaking. We have no words.
All right, thank you.
Your brother's gonna die out in the
asking or requesting help, and then he called actually the police and indicated, quote, "I just stabbed my bitch," close quote. The police were able to get the child, I guess, out through a window, the 3-year-old. He finally let the police in, according to the report. Stay.
In this incident, the defendant is charged with murder. The defendant called police, said that he had stabbed the victim. He further said that it was a couple of times. When officers arrived, he refused to open the door and threatened the officers that he could stab them if they entered. There was a 3-year-old child present for this incident. The defendant fought with officers, and the victim suffered 9 deep puncture wounds.
What does a life cost? Is it measured in the bond a judge sets, or in the number of wounds inflicted? For 21-year-old Destiny Rumley, the price was 9 deep stab wounds, delivered in a place she should have been safest, her own apartment, with her 3-year-old son just feet away. Her accused killer, Tyreek Black, also 21, turned himself in peacefully. He called the police himself and said the words, "I just stabbed my bit." But in a New Haven courtroom, as Black wiped away tears, Destiny's family asked a question that echoes far beyond those walls, a question with no good answer. Even if he got life, what justice can we really get? We can't get our loved one back. This isn't just a story about a murder. It's a story about 2 shattered lives on a collision course, a child caught in the middle, and a family's raw, unfiltered rage in the face of a loss that makes no sense. Before we get into the heart of this tragedy, if you're new here, you've found True Crime Unraveled. We read every single comment you leave across YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok at True Crime Unraveled TV, so please keep them coming. They matter. The last day of 2025. In East Haven, Connecticut, at an apartment on Old Foxon Road, the morning was shattered not by fireworks, but by screams. Multiple 911 calls flooded in around 8:10 a.m. Callers reported a man attacking a woman in a hallway. When police arrived, the scene was a locked door hiding a nightmare. Tyreek Black was in the doorway, a large knife nearby. He retreated inside, barricading himself. But officers could hear a child. Their training kicked in. While some tried to negotiate at the door, others went to a side window, smashed it, and pulled Destiny Rumley's 3-year-old son to safety. Unharmed physically. But what did those little eyes see? Eventually, Black unlocked the door. He fought with officers, but they subdued him. And then they found her. Destiny, just 21, suffering from multiple stab wounds. She was alive when they rushed her to Yale New Haven Hospital. But her injuries were too severe. She succumbed. 9 deep puncture wounds, the prosecutor would later say. The medical examiner ruled it a homicide. In a matter of minutes, a young mother was gone. A little boy was left without her, and a young man who had just called the police on himself was in custody for murder. The next day, New Year's Eve, in a New Haven courtroom, the legal machinery began to turn. But this was no routine arraignment. Tyreek Black, in a white jumpsuit, winced and cried as the charges were read: murder, risk of injury to a minor, assault on police. His attorney, a public defender, painted a picture of a broken system. She said Tyreek Black was truly a product of his environment. A life spent depending on state benefits, in and out of foster care, multiple ineffective interventions from the Department of Children and Families. A history of PTSD, suicide attempts, inpatient and outpatient mental health treatment. She said he was trying. He had a part-time job as a traffic flagger. He had recently completed programs. She said he was extremely remorseful. The judge, however, read the report. He called it very disturbing. He noted Black's own call to police, his statement. He noted that Destiny was trying to call for help when she was attacked. He set a bond of $2.5 million. But as the hearing ended and marshals moved to lead Black away, the simmering pain in the gallery exploded. Destiny's family, their grief curdling into instant, white-hot fury, lunged forward. They screamed. They pushed. Marshals shoved back, a tangle of bodies and anguish. Everyone out, a voice boomed.
State at 235 Church Street. All right, thank you.
Yeah, your brother's gonna die out there.
The scene was pure chaos, a physical manifestation of a heartbreak that no courtroom procedure could contain. Outside, Destiny's cousin, Alder Angel Hubbard, tried to put the pieces together for reporters. This is a shock to the family. Like, who is this character? Because you can't even call him a person for someone of this horrendous act.
They hardly knew him, she said.
The relationship, once past, had seemingly rekindled recently. But to them, he was a stranger who had committed an unforgivable act.
Angela Hubbard and the rest of the victim's family was there Wednesday for Black's first hearing.
There's nothing that he can give as a reason for this, as a reason why now her mother tears gotta water the cemetery ground. What? There's no justice.
Justice for 21-year-old Destiny Rumley. The family gave us permission to use her name and share this picture of her.
Our loved one not to be taken away in such a demeanor through domestic violence. She screamed for help. Her child was there. Now we have to end 2025 and mourning and grieving instead of celebrating 2026. What do we do as a family to you that we now have to take this every day? You brutally attacked.
For you to stab her 9 times.
Stabbed her
9 times.
What justice can we get? Even if he got life, no, seriously, what justice can we really get? We can't get our loved one back.
And their question hung in the cold December air. What justice can we really get? So who are these two 21-year-olds whose paths ended in such violence? Destiny Rumley was a young mother. Her family describes her as kind, loving. She had just moved into that East Haven apartment on December 22nd. She had a whole life ahead of her, a little boy to raise. Her family's world is now one of funeral plans and unanswered questions, of trying to explain the unexplainable to a 3-year-old. And Tyreek Black? The portrait from his defense is one of a child the state failed, repeatedly, bouncing through foster care. Mental health needs flagged, but perhaps never fully or effectively addressed. A history so packed with trauma that it reads like a case study in systemic failure. No prior criminal record. He was, by that account, a walking cry for help that nobody ultimately heard, until his crisis claimed another life. The prosecution's portrait is different. A man who made a choice. Who, during an argument, took a knife and stabbed a young woman 9 times. Who told police he could stab them, too. Who barricaded himself while a child was in danger. Here's the uncomfortable knot at the center of this case. Can both of these portraits be true? Is it possible for someone to be a victim of their circumstances and responsible for a horrific, conscious act? The legal system will decide his guilt. But the bigger question, The one that sits heavy is whether this was a preventable tragedy. Did all those missed signals, those ineffective DCF involvements, those suicide attempts create a pressure cooker that finally blew? Or does that line of thinking let a killer off the hook? There are no easy answers. Only a dead woman, a traumatized child, and a young man whose defense is essentially, "The system broke me." For Destiny's family, the concept of justice is broken too. Alder Angel Hubbard put it plainly, there's nothing that he can give as a reason for this.
What?
There's no justice. A life sentence doesn't bring Destiny back. An apology won't heal her son. Their grief is a road with no exit. They have to face a new year in mourning, while everyone else celebrates. They have to water flowers at a cemetery instead of watching their loved one live her life. And for Tyreek Black, the road ahead involves psychiatric evaluation, a public defender fighting an uphill battle, and a probable plea or trial. His life is also effectively over, whether in a prison cell or under the weight of what he's accused of doing. Then there's the little boy, the one who was pulled from a window. Where does he go? Who explains this to him? His childhood innocence was stolen in the most brutal way imaginable. This case holds up a mirror to some of America's deepest struggles, a mental health care system that's often a labyrinth, a foster care system that can leave kids adrift, and the epidemic of domestic violence that claims lives regardless of background. It asks us, what is our responsibility to the Tyreek Blacks before they become accused killers? And how do we honor and protect the Destiny Rumleys, whose only mistake might have been seeing something to love in a deeply troubled man? The story of Destiny Rumley and Tyreek Black is an American tragedy in the rawest sense. It's not a whodunit. It's a why. And a how could this happen? It's about the wounds we see, the 9 stab wounds, and the wounds we don't, the years of trauma, neglect, and fractured support that may have laid the groundwork for catastrophe. So, what do you think? When we look at a case like this, where do the scales of responsibility truly balance? Is the focus solely on the moment of the crime, or do we have to look at the decades of failure that led to that moment? Can there ever be meaningful justice for a loss like this? We want to hear your perspective. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If this deep dive into a story that's about more than just a crime resonated with you, please hit the like button. It really helps our channel, True Crime Unravelled, reach others who are interested in these complex, human stories. And to make sure you don't miss our next investigation, subscribe and tap that notification bell. For True Crime Unravelled across YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. Thank you for watching and for being part of this conversation.
All right, so this is the arraignment of State versus Tyreek Nelson Black. Appointed public defender?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the public defender is appointed. Bail Commissioner's recommendation?
Your Honor.
I will indicate, first of all, it's an on-site arrest. I did read through the report, and I will clearly make a finding of probable cause for the crimes, including the crime of murder. But go ahead.
Your Honor, he has no criminal history. He is 21 years old. He is a lifelong resident. He reports that he is gainfully employed. He does report substance abuse and mental health issues. I do understand that he has no record. However, due to the nature allegations, we will be recommending $1 million.
How much?
$1 million.
Thank you. State?
Your Honor, in this incident, the defendant is charged with murder. The defendant called police, said that he had stabbed the victim. He further said that it was a couple of times. When officers arrived, he refused to open the door and threatened the officers that he would stab them if they entered. There was a 3-year-old child present for this incident. The defendant fought with officers, and the victim suffered 9 deep puncture wounds. State police said the bond should remain $2 million.
Counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. As stated by Bill, Mr. Black is 21 years old, grew up in Hamden, Connecticut, has been a native of our state his entire life. He attended school, graduated from ACES, and as stated, he has no criminal record. Your Honor, Mr. Black is truly a product of his environment, his upbringing. His background consists mostly of depending on state benefits, grew up in foster care, multiple ineffective DCF involvements. Lack of guidance and support led Mr. Black down the trail of mental health issues. He has multiple diagnoses, including PTSD, multiple stays at inpatient services, outpatient services, and many prior suicide attempts. Even though through all this turmoil in his life, he was trying. Prior to this incident, he was working part-time in Wallingford as a flagger. He had recently completed programs in treatment and was doing well. Mr. Black is also extremely remorseful for this incident. We ask that you take that into consideration when setting the bond for Mr. Black.
Well, he is 21 years of age. I guess he does not have any previous record, is that correct?
No, Your Honor.
I mean, obviously, I read through the report. It is, I know he's emotional right now, but it's a very disturbing report to read when people are calling the police, indicating someone is screaming and asking or requesting help, and then he called actually the police and indicated, quote, "I just stabbed my ditch," close quote. The police were able to get the child, I guess, out through a window, the 3-year-old. He finally let the police in, according to the report. And I believe the defendant, even down at the station, did not disagree. She was calling the police because he had made an oral threat. And as a result of her attempting to call the police is when he admits that he took out a knife and he did stab her. It does indicate, as the state said, that it looks like there was a number of numerous wounds on the victim. The victim was alive when the police were there, but obviously she succumbed to these injuries. Also sounds like they had a prior relationship some time ago, and there was some attempt over the last few weeks, according to the defendant, to rekindle it. It certainly calls for a serious bond, a domestic homicide of someone. I'll set the bond at $2.5 million at this particular time. It's going to be transferred over to Part A. After the serious cases go through 35 Church Street, I'm going to transfer it over there for January 14th. The bond is set without prejudice. Certainly, if you're going to get a public defender over there, they would have the right to argue the bond again over there. But January 14th would be the next date at 235 Church Street.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Yeah, your brother's gonna die out in the field.
This is an unreal, realistic reality for us in 2025. For our loved one not to be taken away in such a demeanor through domestic violence. She screamed for help. Her child was there. Now we have to end 2025 and mourning and grieving instead of celebrating 2026. So this is beyond heartbreaking. We have no words. It's just another chapter of mourning that we can't keep taking.
Was there a history of trouble between the two of them? We don't know him.
We don't even really know him. This is a shock to the family. Like, who is this character? Because you can't even call him a person. For someone of this horrendous act, you're not even a person. So it's a character. You're a made-up person.
And the fact that that little child was there?
We have no words on that. Now that he has to grow up with no mom. I asked him, Mom, now that she's his guardian angel, we have no words to describe how we feel.
And what would be justice?
Life in prison, the electric chair.
Besides life.
To feel what she felt.
Right.
For
Like,
him to suffer.
brutally attacked.
For you to stab her
brutally
9 times.
Stabbed her.
9 times.
What justice can we get? Even if he got life, no, seriously, what justice can we really get? We can't get our loved one back.
And that's what you want.
We would love to have her back. We would trade places. Don't ever love somebody that much that you have to take their life to show that you love them. You that anger. You have that much anger inside of you. Don't ever love somebody that much. Kill yourself. Don't kill us. Why we gotta suffer? What did we do as a family to you that we now have to take this every day?
What did she do as a...
Like what? There's nothing that he can give as a reason for this. As a reason why now her mother tears gotta water the cemetery ground. What? There's no justice.